We don't want to say this out loud to ourselves that we're being disrespected in our relationship. We don't like it. Because if I admit that I'm not being respected in my relationship and yet I'm choosing to stay, then I'm disrespecting myself. I can't live with that fact. It's easier to say that someone did that to me than to admit to say that I allowed it to happen to me. It's not easy. I can't live with that truth. So I have to constantly keep lying to myself. I have to keep denying that this is the case so that I can stay. And that's what I do.
Pour the Heart Out, Episode 8, Self-Respect and Relationships.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 8 of Pour the Heart Out. And throughout this journey of different episodes that we've had so far, we've constantly discussed how the self is so deeply affected by our relationships, especially if it's a romantic relationship. So, today we're going to be talking about one of those issues again. We're going to be talking about one's self respect in a relationship. So, let's start by understanding that what do you think are the different ways in which one's self respect can be undermined in a relationship?
Right. So there are basically many behaviors that can make a partner or both the partners feel disrespected in a relationship. These behaviors range from taking your partner for granted to abusing your partner, violating your partner's emotional, sexual, physical boundaries. One of the most common behaviors that leads to one or two partners feeling disrespected in a relationship is something that's normalized the most in our relationships, and that is anger. We often we hear these statements very carelessly floating around that when you love someone, you also fight with them, you also show them your anger. Of course, you don't do it with people that you don't love. And that's a very carelessly thrown around statement because it is essentially saying that if I love you, I can be angry at you, I can be really nasty with you, I can really disrespect you verbally. And because I know I love you and I know that you love me, I can get away with doing that. You know, we know that we can't get away with doing that to perhaps our boss or to a far off relative or to a friend, because we know that a marriage or a long-term relationship or a romantic partnership doesn't dissolve that easily, and all the other relationships can get dissolved very easily. You can get fired from a job or from a friendship definitely a lot more easily than your partner firing you, as a partner. And that's where we start to take that for granted and we start to justify our anger. It's almost surprising, very sadly surprising, that we are the most abusive, verbally abusive to our partners. The people who we claim to love the most in the world receive the most of that, that nasty part of uh, who we are. And that's where, after a point, they start to feel so disrespected in that relationship. And most of them start to settle for it. They think that that's just how it's going to be. And you settle with that low of self-esteem in that relationship. Another thing that we see hurting one's self-esteem and self-respect the most in a relationship is when your partner starts to act very indifferent towards you and what you have to say and how you feel in the relationship. You see, the whole point of being in a relationship is that it adds meaning to our life. Connection adds a lot of meaning to our life, and we as humans, we want that meaning in our life. We're hardwired to have that be there, you know and when that starts to go for a toss, there's nothing much in that relationship then. A partner who meant everything to you, who you were the most important person, who added so much more meaning to your life, while that honeymoon phase was still on, when your life started to feel more complete. Now the tables have twisted. Now things are not the same anymore. Now what you say, how you express yourself is not heard, you know. It's like you're talking to a wall and they completely block you out, they stonewall you. And that's something that couples claim that hurts them the most. To see that I don't matter, to see that my partner doesn't care about me, to see that I'm almost invisible. They kind of see through me. And I am a no one in their life. They are giving attention to everything else but me. So indifference is something that leads to a lot of blows on your self-respect. um, this brings me to the next behavior, which is taking your partner for granted, right? This is when everything else in your life is important but your partner. So you have room for your friends, you have room for the members in the family, you have room for work. Work, oh my God, work is taking up all the space in people's life. We know it's a constant dilemma. It's love versus career, is what it has become. We don't know how to balance this. And how we actually end up balancing is that we start taking our partner for granted because, again, we know that they are not going anywhere, but we know that the job can go away, the career can go away, and we start to invest all of that, all of our energy, all of our time, effort into that. And somehow we all have this belief that um, this love ship is just going to sail on its own. We have found each other, we've started to spend time together, and that's that. Now everything should work out on its own. We forget to nurture our relationship with that one person that we claim to love the most. We forget to do that. We take it very lightly because we know we can get away with that. We know that this partner is not going anywhere. And that makes your partner feel incredibly disrespected, right? You feel um, like there is literally no value, zero value in your relationship, that your partner will choose anything else over you. Then I think the biggest reason for the demise of any relationship is contempt. When your partner starts to talk to you, starts to interact with you in a way that they are so much better off than you. That at every point they are pointing out what's wrong with you. They're telling you what is it that you need to do better, how do you need to do it. When they start to make you feel that you're nothing, you're absolutely nothing, you don't matter, you have no value, and you know you need to match up, you need to do more, and you need to reach here where I am. And constantly this partner keeps putting themselves on a pedestal, and what they keep throwing on their partner is just a lot of patronizing words and a very condescending tone, right? And that literally starts to plague how you evaluate yourself, how you look at yourself, what your self concept is. Because we know that we are investing in love today like never before. There's a lot of value that a romantic relationship holds in our lives. So, how our partner thinks about us, how they perceive us, how they treat us, affects a great deal, uh, uh, has a massive impact on how we look at ourselves and how we evaluate ourselves. And we can't distinguish these two things from each other. We can't hold ourselves in high regard and yet be in a relationship where we're always held in a very low regard, where we constantly feel that our partner is better than us, you know. And it's this kind of behavior that then has the potential of turning into an abusive relationship. So, abuse is the ultimate form of disrespect that you can throw towards your partner, where you violate them, where you don't understand that this is their boundaries and you can't trespass them, you know, violating their emotional boundaries, where you constantly enter in their space. You're very engulfing, you want to have all of them. You interrogate, you try to control them, you're very possessive, and you call it what? Love. You call it that I have so much space for you in my life, I have so much love for you in my life. And then you shame your partner for not reciprocating that kind of madness and craziness. To not reciprocate that is it means that they don't love you as much as you love them. But controlling behavior is not reflection of the amount of love you have towards your partner. That's emotional abuse. And then there is sexual abuse, and it's so prevalent in relationships. I work with my clients, and every day there are new stories of people being abused under the name of love, people being violated under the name of love sexually. And the lines are so blurred because it's called a romantic relationship. It's called a relationship that's formed on the basis of love and sexual intimacy. So you don't know where exactly the line is. You don't know how much can you agree, how much can you say no to, and you don't know what will be called as abuse at what point. You miss out on those signs, and you can very easily be manipulated to feel that you are somehow obligated to give your partner sex. So often we hear stories of partners saying that girls, by and large, saying that we were, whether in a homosexual or heterosexual relationship, but we were in a relationship, and the first time that we've had sex was not consensual. And so many women have this story, you know, that the first time that we got intimate with someone, it wasn't by choice. It just happened, and we were just lying down there, like a frozen body. We didn't know what to do because we were in a private space with our partner. We agreed to some of it, but then one thing led to another, and I was led to that point. I did not walk up to that point enthusiastically. I did not want it as much as my partner did. And I don't know if I got violated. I sure know that I did not feel very comfortable. I sure know that there was an element of feeling disgusted by it, but I don't know if this was violation. I don't know if this is abuse. So the lines are so blurred, and there's so many questions, and abuse is so common. Sexual abuse is so common. It's rampant in romantic relationships. And that's something that's a big blow on your self-esteem, where you almost start feeling like you're just flesh and bones. You're not a human. You're just your body, and that's what your partner wants. And all of their love is reduced to that, you know and that's when you feel the most, like you're not a human, like you're not valuable. Like, I mean, you don't feel, like you're seen as another person, let alone be respected for who you are. You don't feel seen for what you bring to the table. You don't feel heard for how you feel, what you have to say, what your opinions are. But it starts to feel like you are just your body, you know, and you are there to provide, you're there to give. And that's when people start to settle with this narrative, with this definition, and with this role of themselves in a relationship. And that's how self-respect is just you're robbed of it, and it's taken away from you every day in relationships like these.
Right. And Praneeth, one of the first things you said is that because all of this is so normalized, people somehow settle for it, right? And why do you think that happens? Why do people settle for it? No, and sometimes this is very conscious, even when they know that this is not correct, they still do it. So, what do you have to say about that?
You see that the knowing period lasts for a very small amount of time, and then we go back to shrinking our consciousness in that area because we don't want to accept it. We don't want to say this out loud to ourselves that we're being disrespected in our relationship. We don't want to look at it. We don't like it. Because if I admit that I'm not being respected in my relationship and yet I'm choosing to stay, then I'm disrespecting myself. I can't live with that fact. It's easier to say that someone did that to me than to admit to say that I allowed it to happen to me. It's not easy. I can't live with that truth. So I have to constantly keep lying to myself. I have to keep denying that this is the case so that I can stay. And that's what I do. I make justifications, I make excuses to excuse my partner's behavior and to say that, oh, they did it just because, they were very stressed. They did it because they had too much to drink tonight. They spoke to me like that, or they raised their hand on me, or they treated me a certain way because they have a lot of work pressure. If I won't understand it, who would? Or they're doing it because they've just gotten out of a bad relationship, and I'm just still giving them space to recover from it while they're dating me, by the way. you know and all these reasons, we give them all these reasons, all these justifications, because we want to justify that behavior, because we don't want to accept that we are being disrespected and mistreated in a relationship, because then I'll have to let it go. So clearly, Why we keep ourselves in this state of denial is because we don't want to go or let go. We want to stay. Now the question is, why do we so badly want to stay? When we know that we're not happy, why do we want to stay? Because you see that when I lose my partner, I don't just lose my partner. I lose that feeling that I'll never be lonely again. I lose all the validation that I get from them. I lose all the attention that I'm finally getting. I lose the fact that now I'll always have someone by my side. I lose the fact that I'm never sad and single again. I lose the fact that I can hum to these romantic songs and fantasize living life with someone. When I lose a partner, I lose certainty. And that's one thing we as humans never want to lose. So we keep lying to ourselves and we could keep convincing ourselves otherwise because we want to stay, not just with this partner, but with all these feelings that result in from being in a relationship, you know. And you see, if I choose to see that I'm being disrespected, that I don't have respect in this relationship, I don't experience self respect in this relationship, then that means that I lose all of these other things. So you see, the stakes are very high. So I'd rather convince myself that no, it's fine, I can adjust, I can cooperate, than to have all of these things go away, the things that I do not know how to live without. I don't know how to live without a partner. I don't know how to live alone. I don't know how to be single and happy. What I mean, that phrase, those two words are never used in the same sentences, right? Not anymore. Single and happy, that's probably an illusion. It probably happens in La La Land, not here, not in reality, right? Because everywhere, songs, movies, social media, everyone seems very happy with their partner, right? Nobody's talking about singlehood, nobody's talking about self reliance, nobody's talking about waiting and being ready, getting ready for your partner. Nobody's talking about taking it slow. Everyone is talking about this crazy mad love, you know. Everyone is talking about finding the one and never feeling shitty about yourself ever again, saying goodbye to all of these negative emotions because now the perfect someone has walked into your life, right? And we want to have this narrative be a part of our life, and so we don't want to look at the truth of it. Another reason is actually biological. Your biology, your nervous system, your neurology um, feels very comfortable with being disrespected because it's something that's sure unpleasant and something that doesn't bring you joy, but it's very known. It's a very familiar place to be in, especially if you're coming from a dysfunctional family, you know, which is the case with a lot of people today, because our parents are wounded children themselves. They don't know how to raise children. So they're just basically passing on their own wounds to their children as well. So when you have parents who are very critical of you, when you have parents who always talk to you in a condescending, patronizing tone, when you have been violated sexually, emotionally, physically by a caregiver in your family, when you're constantly told that there's something wrong with you, that you need to match up and be like other kids, and you need to uh, you know uh, act more smart, more active, not be so lazy, be more athletic, be more pretty, be more fairer. When you're told things like these, as much as you hate it and as much as you want all of this to stop, this becomes very familiar. Your nervous system, your brain, your neurons know how it feels to be in this position where you are being looked down at, you know. So when you see this happen to you in your childhood, it's a lot easier for you to accept it in your romantic relationships as an adult as well. You know, it's known, it's familiar, it may be unpleasant, but you've lived it so often that it almost feels like you're at home. And that's exactly where we start to confuse familiarity with love, dependency with love, chaos with love, toxicity with love. And the more chaos and this pull and push sort of a thing is there. People keep breaking up and then getting back together again because of familiarity. And what they call it is that, oh, see, we always come back to each other. That's the narrative that they weave around it. But it's not so much as coming back to each other, but it's more like coming together, breaking apart, coming together and breaking apart. There's instability there, there's inconsistency, there's chaos. But chaos is familiar, it's known, and we confuse it with love. And we would never let love go, right? That's one value we've all inherently learned. We won't let love go. So if you're so convinced it's love, if you're not calling it what it is, we won't be willing to look at the reality of it. So you're right, we sometimes do see it, we sometimes do acknowledge it. We always call up that one best friend and we tell her or him how we're feeling, and we tell them that I don't feel respected in this relationship. But the moment we keep that phone down, we also keep our feelings down and we never pick them back up, because same reason, it's too much reality, it's too much truth, and I don't want to look at it.
And what is it that you like to say to these people who've sort of tried not to get in touch with reality? How would you advise them to turn off that autopilot here?
It really begins with being authentic to yourself. You see that what we're thinking this relationship is giving us, attention, love, validation, respect, that we're being seen, that we're being heard. If we look at the reality of it, it's not so much our reality, but it's more like our illusion. It's our illusion. We're not so much in love with our partners as much as we're in love with the idea of having a partner in life and the idea of not being single and being in a relationship. We like that feeling, no matter who the person is, no matter what they're like. We like that feeling. That's why we jump from one relationship to another. And so many of my clients walk into therapy while they're still in a relationship and they say that they don't feel a thing about their partner. It's so common. They don't feel a thing about their partner, but it's just familiar. you know Letting go feels like they're just always going to be nostalgic and very sad that they let it go, so they don't want to. There are too many memories, there's too much time spent together, there's too much that we've done together. Every nooker, every store, every restaurant, every bar, every cloth reminds them of their partner, and that's why they don't want to let go. So the idea is that we continue to stay in a relationship because we want to be happy. And it is exactly the source where all the unhappiness and sadness and distress is coming from. The more distressed and unhappy we are, the more we want to hold on to something that gives us the illusion of happiness. And that's how we're stuck in this vicious cycle. We never break out of it. And we deserve to, all of us do. We deserve to actually get that love that we're living with the illusion of, you know. And how can we have that happen to us until unless we don't let go of the people who are not giving us that and make room for the right ones to come along, you know. And the first step is to stop lying to ourselves, to like look at the reality in the face. You need to tell yourself the truth. You need to feel before you heal, right? You need to feel to heal, actually, right? And it's only when you acknowledge today that you're unhappy, you will let go of the things that are making you unhappy. And that's when you'll make room for the things that would make you happy. That's how you'll break away from that pattern of having chaos in your life and being comfortable with it. You need to experience peace, you need to experience love being reciprocated, you know both sides. It's either your one-sided love or their one-sided love, and the other person is just there out of obligation. So to have it reciprocated is what y'all deserve. Everyone, all of us deserves, and if we don't allow that to happen, that will never become our reality. And the more it'll the just the opposite of it would keep coming our way, the more we would get familiar with it and the farther we'll get from getting what we actually want, right? So the idea is, the first step is that we stop and we ask ourselves, how do I really feel, and just not lie, just be authentic, get in touch with my emotions. And when my partner walks into the room and apologizes for the verbal abuse that they throw at me every day and that they've normalized so much, they say sorry, and then sorry is followed by, but I was too tired, but I have too much going on, but I have all of this, which means that sorry is just for the heck of it. But for most part, they're justifying their behavior, and they're somehow, in a way, commanding you that don't take it too seriously, don't take it to your heart, it's not that big a deal. It happens, it's normal. And they're somehow programming you to also normalize it in the relationship. And then they walk into the room and they apologize and then they hug you and there's an exchange of physical affection. That very moment you betray yourself and you tell yourself it's fine, let it go, because you want to be that boyfriend who doesn't um, do a lot of kitch kitch like her ex did and she always complained about it. You want to be that ideal girlfriend who is supportive, who is not someone who's a pain in their butt. And you want to be the compliant one, because you've seen your mother do exactly the same thing with your father. And you want to be mellow, you want to be supportive, compromising so that they stay, right? And that's what you're doing. You're betraying yourself at every moment. The more you will betray yourself, the more they will betray you. The more you will disrespect yourself, you're giving them more avenues to disrespect you. It's simple as that.
Right. And Praneeth, like how you also mentioned and how you've seen that disrespect is one of the most common concerns that any couple right now has. So I want to understand from you, do you think that this disrespect is conscious on the partner's end, or do you think it's unconscious or a mix? So what do you think it is?
I think it's more on the autopilot than conscious. This is to not say that they're not aware of what they're doing to their partner. But they don't like sit and go like, today I'm gonna disrespect my partner. Like that's not the narrative and that's not the intention. It's probably coming from a learned behavior. Like I said, we're modeling exactly what our parents did in their marriage or in their relationship, exactly what we've seen them do, what we've witnessed happening in our family, how adults in our family have interacted. We model the same thing because that's the only way we know love, right? So it's learned, and we don't know any other way of behaving. We've not seen it. And because we're not conscious that I'm just repeating the same behavioral pattern, that makes it unconscious. That makes where it's coming from unconscious, but the behavior that you're doing, you're basically choosing it, right? So you see that the answer is yes, and you know. Um, One is modeling, and then second is that there's a whole set of insecurities. So this one partner who is constantly disrespecting you in the relationship is not necessarily an ass, is not necessarily a jerk, is not necessarily someone who is enjoying doing this, but is someone who is doing that to protect themselves. Because if I feel insecure about myself, and if I put you down, and if I tell you how you are worse and how I'm better off than you, then I automatically feel more powerful than you. People who use contempt as their weapon are basically people who are very inferior deep down. People who have the so-called superiority complex are basically people who have a massive amount of inferiority complex, but they don't wear it like that, right? They wear a mask where they tell themselves that they're better off, you know. And this is not to shame people who have insecurities. This provides a window of introspection to those people as well. That, I'll tell you that when these people walk into therapy, they're always troubled by their own behavior as well. They keep saying and they keep thinking that we can't control it, we can't change it. We've been this person for too long. Everyone dislikes us, everyone hates us, we don't deserve love, right? They have that self depleting narrative as well. But here is a window of introspection for them as well, that underneath that contempt, underneath that anger, underneath that dominating, suppressing, controlling behavior, that where you take away your partner's respect, there's basically your set of insecurities. You don't want to be attacked by your partner, so you attack them first. You don't want them to leave you, to abandon you, so you put them down so that they feel that they are too lucky to have you and never leave you, you know, and they almost feel grateful to find you in their life, and then they would not leave. And you're not aware of these behaviors, right? It's something that we all need to sit down with, and we need to introspect what are our patterns, where are we coming from, what is this behavior essentially doing for us, how is it serving us, right? So there's room for introspection for everyone, people who are at the receiving end of it, people who are at the giving end of it, and sometimes you can be at both the ends, because both the partners in a relationship are feeling attacked and insecure, so they're taking turns in attacking each other, and they're keeping scores. Today I am more powerful. Today I am more valuable. Today I win. Today I win. Because if I win and you lose, that says something about my position in the relationship. And if I lose, then I lose face in the relationship. I lose value in the relationship. And that very moment, I start feeling insecure. And all my fears from the childhood of being abandoned, of being rejected, of being disapproved, become my reality. They become my reality yet again. And that's one thing that I would not want to go back to, right? It's scary. It's not fun to be in that place where you're constantly fearing being abandoned by someone you love so dearly. So you constantly keep putting up that face where you convince your partner and yourself that you're better than them, you're better than this, and you're not fearful of anything. So I think it's mostly unconscious. Yeah.
All right. Now moving on to understanding, how do you think somebody can safeguard themselves from this disrespect? I don't know, maybe any patterns, boundaries. How would you how would you answer that?
Boundaries. That's an important word for this episode. You know, boundaries are just like charity, begins at home, and not the concrete walls wala home, this home, inside of you. So if you are not upholding your own boundaries, you can't expect for someone else to do it for you. Someone else doesn't come and safeguard your boundaries. Every country has their own army to safeguard their boundaries, right? Their borders. They don't expect some other country to come and do it for them. That's threatening. Because then they can take over. They can have the best of intentions, but that's too much power giving to someone, right? And what you should be doing for yourself, for your own country, for your own well-being, you can't expect someone else to do that for you. Because you see, we all are the center of our lives. I'm the center of mine, you're the center of yours. And if you'll have me protect your boundaries while I'm still the center of my life and you're not taking charge for yours, it's not going to work very well for you. I can't help but I'll keep thinking what's in it for me. That's how human brain works, right? Because a big part of our brain is responsible for our survival. We're constantly ensuring that we're okay, we're safe, we're in a fine position, and when it'll come to that, when it'll come to a house, burned down or something, I will save myself first, right? And if I save a family member, that's because they are an extended part of me, so I'm essentially still saving myself. You see, that's how human brain is wired. So if you want to practice boundaries and you want your partner to respect your boundaries and not violate them and not disrespect you, then you first need to respect yourself. And what does that mean? What does that look like? Very fancy statement, something that is said a lot about. It's the most selling, I think, headline, especially in the self-help industry. How to build boundaries, how to have people respect you. um, there is no how to it, I think. It's more about a journey, it's a process, it's where you learn to not betray yourself. you know when your partner, like I said, that when they walk into the room and they apologize for a very careless behavior and think that you will let it go and you will just like forgive and forget and move on, just to have them repeat it repeat the same thing the next day, then when you are not respecting yourself, you're allowing them a space where they can also disrespect you, right? And you are sort of um, you're reducing yourself to that position where you can be treated like that. And that's the thing, if you can get away with something, you will get away with it, you know. That's how we humans are, right? So you need to uphold your boundaries yourself. You know, it's like when you go to a restaurant with a group of people, right, and you're all sitting down with your menus and everyone's seeing what do they want to order, and this is a rather new group, you've not hung out with them, they're all friends with each other, but you're the newest one, and they're all fighting over, oh, this is what I want to order, this is what I want, and they all mutually discuss and place an order, and you don't say anything because you're too confused. It's a very overwhelming situation for you. You don't know what you want to order. You don't know what exactly does it mean, whatever is written on the menu. You don't know what those dishes are. So you don't place an order. They place an order for you. And then whatever comes along, you just have to eat it. You can't complain. You can't question. You can't go like, you didn't respect my likes or dislikes. You got to say out loud what you expect, what you want, what your likes and dislikes are, right? That's how you practice boundaries. If you are sitting on a table in a restaurant and you're not placing your order, then you're going to be a victim of someone else's order. You can't help it. And here's, I think, the biggest catch, one thing that we need to understand the most. I discuss that with my clients a lot. A lot of my clients are like, we tried creating that boundary, but they don't respect our boundaries. They're like, oh, how can you do this, whatever. And I always tell them, your boundaries are not for them to respect, it's for you to respect, right? And if they understand it, they respect it, it's not for them to approve of them, right? You are the one who needs to approve of them. You are the one who needs to respect them. And people in your life who do respect your boundaries, then you know, right? They are the keepers. And the ones who don't, you need to reconsider what's happening in those relationships, right? But here's the thing, that sometimes we try to force making boundaries. We try to do it prematurely. What does that mean? It means when we're not ready, when we're not ready for it. I'm going to draw a boundary, you won't like it, you'll disapprove, you'll leave me. Am I ready for that? When I'm not ready for it, I'm going to screw up. Which is to say that to sit in that restaurant and to place my order and to be vocal, and we shame ourselves for not being able to be vocal, right? We shame ourselves and we don't forgive ourselves because we put ourselves in that position where we keep allowing the other person to disrespect us. But here's the thing, we first need to know what we want to eat, which means that we first need to know how we really feel. We first need to know, how is this person taking away my self-respect? How are they affecting my sense of self? What am I truly feeling? What was I feeling before they came and asked for forgiveness and hugged me in a very superficial manner, where it was evident that they didn't mean it, but I let it go? What was I feeling right before that moment? How did I feel when they shouted at me, or they pushed me towards sex when I didn't want to have it, and I was just lying there numb, frozen, and then I come back to my corner, open my laptop, start binge eating and binge watching, because I don't want to process what happened there. Process it. Until unless you don't know how you feel, how your partner makes you feel, you would not know what to do with them. You would not know what to do with yourself in this relationship. So there is no how to. There is diving into it and letting yourself feel it, you know. And when you'll feel it, you will know how to voice it. That's the power of it. It just happens on its own. That's why I don't understand when people go like, you can say this, you can say that to draw boundaries. You don't need to be told what to say. You will know what to say. That is if you are in touch with how you're really feeling. Of course, you can learn to communicate that. That's a separate lesson, but it comes much later. Before that, you need to be in touch with Like I said, at least you need to know what these dishes are and what do I like. What if you don't know what your taste is like? What if you don't know what you like, what you dislike, what works for your stomach, what doesn't, what sits well with you, what doesn't? If you don't know, your anything can happen. You can be in for a big surprise or a big shock. You don't know that. And then you are not going to be a participant in your life, you're just going to be a spectator. You're going to sit back and you're going to watch people walk into your life, give you a certain amount of self-respect, and the very next moment take it away from you. So here's how you practice boundaries. You first know what does it mean to make boundaries. You first know how you feel, what you feel, and for that you need to look at yourself. You need to be authentic and you need to stop, at least start noticing when you're betraying yourself. When you do that, you would know what kind of boundaries do you want to draw with who, which person do you want to allow to come in, and how much to allow them to come in. Who needs to stop right there, who needs to be in your outer circle, who can come into your inner circle, and who can then come even closer than that. Right, all of this has to be a mindful process, and for it to be mindful, simple step, we first need to be in touch with our emotions, be observant of ourselves. And observing is an art that you inculcate while you practice it every day.
Right. And before we move to the closing, we go to community questions. One last thing that I want to ask you, like how you also said that a lot of this behavior of not calling out the disrespect and all of that stems from this fear of abandonment or the fear of being alone and not having a partner. And of course, I'm sure it's a difficult fear to shed. But if you could say something as a head start for dealing with that fear, what would it be?
How about that we uh, stop fearing being in this space and start negotiating with it? How about we just try for a moment to look at it differently? To be in this space where we're alone, to be in this space where we're single. Maybe just like pick up our journals and write about it in a different light. That what is really so scary about being alone? Is there really something so scary about it, or is it the anticipation of it that makes it scarier? Or is it the stories around being lonely that I've heard from people? Or is it the uncertainty attached to it that I'm okay being lonely today, but what if it's the case for the rest of my life? Negotiate, talk to these feelings, talk to these states, and see what's so scary about them, right? I always say that just move that pile of clothes from your couch and have these loneliness and all of these feelings sit next to you, you know, and negotiate and talk to them in a very friendly light, not in a place where you're shit scared that you start trembling and there is a panic attack first and then there is thinking about anything. you know this fear is also learned, right? This space is unknown, and that's why everything unknown we fear it, right? So allow this to be a conversation in your group. you know Talk to your friends about it, discuss it with your peers, with your colleagues, with your family, your friends, your siblings, your parents. Talk about this fear, because everyone has it. Your mother fears being lonely if something happens to your father, and she fears it all the more if your father is sick, and vice versa. Your siblings feel it, single children feel it. When your best friend moves to a different country or gets married, which is happening, God knows, so often these days, right? You feel it. You constantly fear it. Everyone is fearing it. An 80-year-old grandfather in a family who sees death approaching and who sees that I won't be able to be there for my children anymore, or who sees his wife being on the deathbed, and seeing that she might go away first, and then I will be left alone with my children who are really busy in their life. He feels it. Everyone feels it. So something that we're all feeling, we need to talk about it. We need to converse about it, and we need to see what's so scary about it. There can be a sense of community built out of exactly something that is taking it away from us, and we need that. I always say that what an entire um, set of people, a community, a village used to provide, we now expect all of that from one person. And that's why we're so scared of having them go away. So, what we need to do is we need to lean on our community. We need to connect back with them and we need to communicate with these feelings, talk to them.
Right. As always, Praneeth, that was very enlightening. And now let's move to a few questions that people from our community have sent us. Okay. So the question reads, my girlfriend once loved me, but soon dumped me. I lost all my self respect by trying to save that relationship. How do I forget her and forgive myself?
Hmm. Right. You see, that's what, that when we are still operating from our insecurities from the childhood, let's say insecurities being the fear of abandonment, the fear of being rejected. When we are still on that survival mode where we're trying to protect ourselves, we do a lot of things that evoke shame later on, right? And we only shame ourselves and we're only not able to forgive ourselves when we don't see where we're coming from, when we don't see why we acted the way we did. There is nothing to forgive because what you did is not a sin. Of course, you put your everything into saving that relationship because that relationship was everything, right? It meant so much more than just losing a partner. It felt like losing a part of your body, didn't it? And when it did, when you lose a part of your body or you see yourself just almost losing it, you try to do everything you can in your power to save it, and you might regret doing some of the things later on. But that's how it works. That's how your reactive brain works. So, in order to forgive yourself, you don't need to force forgiveness. It's fine, hota hai. No, that won't work. You'll be forceful. You need to see where you were coming from. You need to see your patterns. You need to see why you did what you did so that you're genuinely able to tone down that shame and forgive yourself. When you will be able to see where you're coming from, you will automatically be able to see where your partner was coming from. Until unless you don't forgive yourself, you don't forgive other people. And until unless you don't forgive them, you don't forget them. When you will get in touch with your deprivations in the childhood, let's say that your parents were so busy making a living for you that they were never there to give you physical affection, to make you feel protected. And from your mother, you learn self compassion, and from your father, you learn self protection. But if both of them were not there, then you never learned self compassion and you never learned self protection. So you couldn't protect yourself when your partner was violating you, and you couldn't be kind to yourself when you wanted from them what you wanted. They shamed you, you got shamed. So the moment you understand your deprivations from the childhood, you are able to be kind to yourself. You are able to forgive yourself for what you did. And then immediately you're able to um, see if you were getting it from your partner, those needs met from your partner or not. If you were not, then you letting go is easier, because now it's put in context and you're able to understand what really happened there, why I acted so crazy, and what felt like love was actually not love. It was hope that I will finally have it, what I never had. It was dependency, right? It was perhaps something that's familiar and known. And the moment you understand what your needs are, you are able to forget the person who was giving you the illusion of fulfilling those needs, right? It's familiarity with these patterns that makes you want to hold on to these people in a very toxic manner. So that's what you need to do. You need to get back in touch with where you're coming from. And you need to be kind to yourself in understanding what your deprivations were. Because um, we only call ourselves needy and desperate when we don't understand the amount of starvation and the amount of deprivation that was there in our childhood.
Right. Moving on to the next question. How do you balance selflessness with self respect in a relationship?
Hmm. Interesting question. Uh, Selflessness is it basically means where you're more concerned about the needs of the other people and you're not concerned about yours. And there's nothing sexy about that. There's nothing fun about that. There's nothing cool about that. There's nothing. Um, if there's anything about that, is that it's glorified a lot in our culture, right? Where we're constantly talking about not looking at yourself but other people. And I'll tell you that humans can't work like that. We can't. We're hardwired to think about ourselves. Like I said, we are all the center of our own lives. We don't do anything selflessly. We don't need to. We shouldn't. Even if I say that I did something for my partner because it would make them happy, that's because I want to be the carrier of their happiness for them, because that adds meaning to my life and makes me happy. So I'm ultimately doing it for my happiness. Besides, to be selfless is to be in a position where you have no demands, where you have no expectations, and that's not how relationships work. When you are in a relationship, it's two-sided. You ask your partner what their demands and expectations are, and you tell them yours. Love can be unconditional, relationships can't be, because there are roles to play in relationships. And when there are roles, with roles comes expectations and demands. And your expectations, you know them only when you know yourself. When you know yourself and you know your needs, when you know your needs, you're not being selfless, but you're also not being selfish. What you're doing is you're taking care of yourself. This is self-care. Because it's only when you're happy and you feel respected and valued in a relationship is when you can bring to the table the exact same things for your partner and for the rest of your family as well, for the rest of your community. You can't have your own oxygen levels going down and help someone else with their oxygen levels. That can't be that it just can't work like that. And that's one thing that we talk about the most in our mental health community, that if we are not taking care of our mental health, we can't offer this help to anyone else. So no one is doing selfless work here. You know, we are all the beings of meaning. We want meaning in our life constantly. That's how our life is worth living, right? We're inherently in search for that meaning. We don't inherently have it, but we create it. We make meaning. We find it, and we find it the most in our relationships. So you don't need to balance um, selflessness with what self-respect. These are not two different things that need to be balanced. There is unconditional love, and then there is knowing that what are my expectations, and prioritizing both of these things equally, and then seeing that am I getting what I want in this relationship while I offer what my partners expect from me. And it's only then when it's going to be a healthy relationship.
Right. And with that, we come to a close for today's episode. There are so many things that we discussed today. We discussed one self esteem, we discussed deprivation, we discussed boundaries, most importantly. And there's so much for our viewers to go back and think about. And do let us know how you liked it. Do let us know in comments what do you feel about it. And we'll see you next time with another episode. And until then, keep pouring your heart out.